Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, James Protin. Every week I will be sharing the experiences that have defined my journey and talking with people who have their own powerful story to tell. It's about doing better and being better in life, business, and all things in between. The visually inclined can catch us on YouTube, or you can check us out on just about every podcast platform. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We're back here in Chico Bacello in Canonsburg, and our guest today is very exciting for me. I'm excited about this show. Karen Scuilli is joining us. Karen is the founder of Face2Face Healing, which is a nonprofit that I'll let her explain it. But Karen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jim, for having me as well. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah,
the opportunity.
And it's funny because, in our social media driven world, we've been connected on social media for a while. And this is actually the first time we've ever had a chance to chat in person.
Yes.
So that's really cool. And so we have a lot of things in common. And, that's how, the network thing works, especially here in Pittsburgh. It's kind of, a small circular group that moves in and out. So, and I didn't know you had a connection down here in Washington County. You were in Washington Hospital for a good while.
I did, yes.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yes. So I worked at Washington Hospital for many years. I grew up in West Virginia.
Okay.
And I started my nursing career, went to school in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Okay, sure.
Then I was looking at an opportunity to expand. And
Sure.
I had moved away and then come back in the area, and I had open heart experience. And that's what brought me to Washington Hospital, was being able to, we were the first I was one of the main people hired because of my experience in open heart. I lived in North Carolina and had open heart experience. So we trained under Mercy Hospital, Dr. Sortino, Dr. Pellegrini.
Okay. And those are very well-known names in the cardiac world.
Yes.
Those guys are legends.
Yeah. So it was a great opportunity. Got to meet a lot of great nurses. I think that's the thing is it was a camaraderie. We were like a family
Sure.
working at Washington Hospital, helping and starting that open heart program. So it was really nice.
That's amazing. And Washington Hospital, and that's something you should really be proud of, because Washington Hospital is known for their heart program. And it's, this in this part of the world, we're so blessed with healthcare, just period, with UPMC and HN and, Washington and these smaller, more regional and community hospitals,
Yes.
That stuff's a thing of the past just about everywhere else in the country. You don't see that.
Right. And so that's one thing that Washington Hospital has kind of been trying to stay, separate, but, it was nice. And then I was actually working on my bachelor's degree for nursing at that time. And I was able to work with Ann Hast and develop the case management program.
Okay.
So I was studying case management. So then I was able to work on that program that they were starting, which gave me a great opportunity to kind of get out of the bedside, which was sad for me because I'd been doing it for so long. But it gave me an opportunity. I was looking at you're changing lives one at a time, but then having an opportunity to change more lives was something exciting for me. Did that with Ann Hast. That led to, then I ended up going to Highmark, was case manager working with Highmark, actually helping more people. So it was very exciting.
That's awesome. So you were really following your passion, because you told me a story a little bit ago while we were just getting chatting about how your journey into becoming a nurse started when you were just a child.
Correct.
Tell us about that.
I was 11 years old. I had thyroid cancer. Well, I was having issues. Went to Children's Hospital. I was sent there from Parkersburg because they didn't know what was going on. So they sent me for more experienced positions. Went to Children's Hospital. Dr. Thomas E. Bowles was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and it was benign.
Okay.
So that was good, but had to go through a lot of I-131 treatment at 11 years old. So that was very difficult. I had to be separated from my parents mostly because I had to stay there, for weeks at a time.
People don't realize that as a child, you go through a lot of that type of thing alone.
Yes. I mean, I did make a lot of friends that were nurses, kids that were actually there. So it helped me decide that I wanted to be a nurse. So that's kind of like how my nursing kind of was kickstarted, so to speak. But I just think that was part of the journey that God, had for me. So that's what I look at.
And that led you to pediatric nursing.
Well, I was looking at doing pediatric nursing, and then I was in nursing school, and I had a patient. He was 16 years old, and spent a lot of time with him, helping him, and he was struggling, but he had leukemia, and it was found when he was actually doing a physical to play football. So it was very difficult for him. But I would go over and spend time with, because our residence was part of the hospital at High Valley School of Nursing, and go over and I would play cards and just try to keep him occupied, so to speak. But yes. And then that summer I ran into his mother, and he had passed away. So that was something that I decided that pediatric was probably not right for me, because it was so heartbreaking.
Oh my goodness.
To get connect with kids. It's actually with anybody. I connect with every person, but with kids that time, I just I don't think I can do this.
It's not for everybody.
No.
I mean, that's really heart-wrenching. I mean, it's devastating when, when you see any young person, let alone a child, that is sick and struggling, and so your journey started at a very, very young age, at 11 years old, and you found your way into a career that you developed a passion for at a very, very young age again. And so when you got diagnosed with the second time with cancer, and tell me what it was?
Parotid gland cancer.
Parotid gland cancer.
It's a salivary gland, which is in your cheek.
I had never heard of that until I saw it when you had told me that. And so how did you know that there was something wrong?
Well, first of all, parotid gland cancer is very rare. So it's not, it's less than 1%.
Really?
Yes. So it was very difficult, but I started having pain anterior to my ear, radiating down my face. And so it was extreme pain. So I started going to different doctors, trying to figure out what was going on. Had difficulty doing that. Then I found Dr. Shaken. So it was about 9 months later, but found Dr. Shaken and at Chase Hospital in UPNC. And I met him through a physical therapist because I was concerned then 2 weeks later, after I had the pain, I ended up with drooping. So I was like, what is going on? And being a nurse,
you have to be how do you fight the urge to self-diagnose yourself? You know what I mean?
Well, I wasn't trying to self-diagnose. I was just trying to figure out what was going on. So I was trying to my family doctor, Dr. Richard Hart, was amazing, but trying to, I did research and I was looking at different doctors. I thought maybe it was neurological. So I was looking at different ways to, and he helped me guide, and connect with different doctors. But that was very, very difficult because I was just having so much pain that the pain was so severe and no medication was helping me that I could not even go to sleep. So I would only fall asleep from extreme exhaustion. So that would my parents ended up coming and staying with me because I had my son.
This was about 10 years ago?
It was 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
My son was 7 at the time, and it was very, very difficult. Because he he was little and he, was going to school and so he was in second grade. And so he just needed a lot of
his mom. I mean, the thing of that is just crazy to me because, when you're sick, let alone, when you're healing and you have a child as a mother, you're the most important human on earth to that little boy at that point in time.
Yes.
Right. And so you're trying to deal with this and trying to literally to survive and having to, also be there for him. And, that's wow. It's heartbreaking, but it's so inspiring that you had the strength and resilience to do that.
Well, I think I just kept trying to find out what was happening. I just wanted to get better so I can get back to my life. That's all I wanted. And so it was a long journey. And then I found out, Dr. Barry Shaken actually diagnosed me. And so I had to end up having surgery. which was a very long process. So the first was like, so the cancer was in my external ear canal, into my mandible, maxilla, TMJ joint. So they had to remove all those structures on the right side of my face, including the nerves. So they did take nerves. Dr. Shakin did take nerves out of my lower leg to put into my face to hopeful, for regeneration. And with nerves, you never know. So it's a, 50-50 chance. Yes, correct. Yeah. So I was willing at that point, whatever I needed to do. Dr. Schwartz actually took my iliac crest out of my hip, which is the front part, put it in to make me a new mandible. I had plate and screws. That lasted, I was supposed to have reconstructive surgery, and Dr. Daniel Patouche was supposed to do a 3D model to put into my face to actually to help me with symmetry. However, the cancer was so aggressive that they could not do the surgery. So they had to proceed with radiation and chemo. So I had 35 treatments of radiation and was supposed to have 7 weeks of chemo. But with head and neck cancer, every cancer is different and has its own challenges. Head and neck cancer, by far, to me, going through it, but also being a patient, is that it's very difficult. You're dealing with so many complexities. I mean, other cancers are also hard. You have surgeries you're dealing with.
Well, everything's hard, but you have so much. Literally the complexity of being a human being is here. It's from the shoulders up, right? I mean, that's
face is the first thing you see,
right?
And so for me as a woman, also, having alterations to my face and having a different appearance was very difficult. But chewing, like I had my mouth wired shut. I had a trach, so not being able to talk, not being able to eat. Those are big things. Often many cancer patients that have head and neck surgery or have head and neck cancer have to go through, and then the chemo and radiation. Then you have radiation burns. It's a lot of things, but. The biggest thing is my why was my son. He was 7 at the time. I had to do everything I could to fight for him.
It's hard for you to even communicate with him, right? And he was reaching out. He needed you, and you found a way to communicate with him and just to kind of let him know that you were okay and that everything was going to work out.
Yeah. So he was 7 at the time, but I got him a phone.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people probably have objections to that, but that was my way of communicating with him. I was going to be in the hospital.
Anybody object to that? I mean, to be honest, that was an incredibly selfless thing to do because, again, it's hard enough for me to picture myself going through what you went through, but then having a child, especially, father, son, mother, son, 2 completely different things. Right. And we talked, that was funny because I have a son, Seth, your son is Seth, which is very interesting. Gift from God, which I didn't know when I named my son. I just thought it was a really cool name. I'd like to claim that. And I think I will moving forward. So you got him a cell phone so that you still couldn't talk. So you had to text.
Right. So I was going to be in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And so, I was, of course, ICU, then I went to step down and then gradually, and I have a bunch of tubes. I didn't want him to see me that way. I wanted him to,
it would have terrified him.
It would have. So I wanted to make sure. And actually, I didn't look at myself. Like I would pass the mirror in the bathroom and I would not look because I was afraid of what I was going to look like. And so I think that I was coming up on the elevator from ICU to the floor I was going to be at. I think it was 6 West at Shadyside Hospital. And during that transition or during that elevator ride, there was a lady and her child, and the child had this horrified look on her face. And I just said to my mom, because she was with me, I'm like, do I look like a monster? Like, what do I look like?
Wow.
And of course, my mom, like, you look fine. Everything is fine. I'm like, so I just did not look at myself.
Standard mom answer.
You look beautiful. I'm like, yeah, right. So, but I just did not want to look at myself. I knew that, it was it was going to be different. So it was very hard for me to adjust to. And funny story is, I got very close with all my doctors. They were amazing. They saved my life and provided such great care. And they had residents that work with them, and got very close with them as well. And just a brief story is that I was in my room and I was walking to the bathroom, and I just happened to like turn my head enough to like get a glimpse in the mirror. And I, of course, started crying. So at that time, one of the physicians, because they were coming to talk to me about cancer treatment, and so it was a radiologist, radiation oncologist, I'm sorry. And he was starting to talk to me about that. And he wrote a consult psych on the chart. And so at that time, the one resident was actually in Canada visiting his girlfriend. And he called the nurse's station and said, please take the phone into the room so I can talk to Karen. And so he's like, are you okay? And I said, yes, why? And he said, well, we've got this order to consult psych. Did something happen? I said, for Pete's sakes, I was just coming back to the bathroom. I caught a glimpse of my face and I started crying. I said, is that not a normal response?
I would think.
So he said, of course it is. And so of course they sent psych in. But the thing, I get having a psych consult, and I know I needed that. But the hard thing for me, and it's kind of like leads to why I started Face2Face Healing, but the hard thing for me is that you go to talk to a therapist, no one understood what I was going through. No one understood the changes that I was going through, how I went from one phase to another phase, and how to process that.
Recognize yourself.
And I was starting to process it myself. So they were like, tell me about what you're thinking. And I had nothing to say because, so I'd sit there in silence and I'm like, listen, this is pointless for me to come because you're not helping me.
Well, and even if you had answered, how would they understand? How would they know what to say to respond to you? Because unless you've gone through something traumatic like that, you can't know. You cannot know. How do you counsel somebody when you have no idea what they're going through?
You can't. And so the interesting thing is like, so I look at, here I am, broken is how I felt. This life puzzle that I so carefully put together for 47 years is now blown apart. And so there's pieces missing of that puzzle. And so now I'm struggling to fill the void of those pieces because now I can no longer work. I had to take off. Rightly so. I mean, I'm going through treatment. I financially was, not as stable because I'm not working because you're on disability. You don't get the full pay.
Sure.
So here I am being a single mom, going through treatment, having travel to Pittsburgh. I lived in Washington at the time, or I live in Washington. So traveling to Pittsburgh every day for treatment. So I had weekends off, but, Monday through Friday, it was radiation and then chemo on Wednesdays. Well, then very quickly, because I had difficulty eating, because I had to suck, everything supposedly through a straw, but it was difficult for me to do that because I had a difficult time with sucking.
Sure.
So I had to reprogram all that. So, but my mom would make smoothies and try to, drink smoothies. And so the smoothies are okay for a while, but they get kind of boring. So I was looking for,
old after you do it long enough. Yeah.
So then we started blenderizing soups and that type of thing. So, just trying to be creative. But my mom was great. But
that's awesome.
So, not being able to eat, not being able to really take care of myself. I had a wound on the back of my head. So I had to have a nurse come in to do that. And they trained my mom, which my mom is not. And I mean, I love her and she takes great care of all of us. But I remember even when we were little, if any of us were throwing up in the bathroom, she was outside the door going, do you need anything? She'd be,
I'll get someone to get it.
I'll get you some water, and I'll put it on the counter. And then,
my mother was the same way. She wasn't hands-on with that stuff.
So, and hey, we all have our limitations. We all have our gifts. So, but, I mean, but she did a great job doing my dressing change. And, I just can't thank her enough, for everything she did, by my side, my mom and my dad. But, I mean, it's just, every step, and every person I think faces adversity at some point. It may
Everybody
not be.
Does. You can't avoid it. You can't hide from it.
It may not be a cancer diagnosis. It may be something different, but we all face adversity. And I think, it's really about rising above or rising up and moving forward. And it's not really about staying in that element, of being depressed or sad. Now, granted, I did have my time. I'm not going to, don't get me wrong.
So what did it take for you to just like, okay, this is it. This has to stop. I need to get going.
My son.
Okay.
My son, he said to me one day, he said, Mama, you can't go anywhere. You can't go. You can't leave me. And I'm like, okay, I don't plan on leaving you. But he said, no, Mama, you're here with me. You can't leave. And so that was the kick in the pants I needed, and decided that, I had to dig in. Yeah. And I, started doing different things. And so I had a group of doctors, and then I was asking them, okay, well, where do you send your patients? Like, I was looking for support. I was looking for help.
That was my next question. Where do you find support in the community?
Yeah. At that time, there was none. So I said to them, and I found an organization called Let's Face It in the United Kingdom. And at that time, they were dealt with all cancer patients with head and neck. Okay. And so I was reaching out to them, and I thought, that would be great for support. And I'm thinking, do you have like a sister company or anything like here in the United States? And they're like, no, we don't know of anything. So then I started talking to my physicians, and then I met Louise Brown. She's the executive director of Shadyside Hospital Foundation. And she felt so compelled by my story that she would want to, they gave us funding, and I started a nonprofit called Face2Face Healing. And it has two meanings. One is I started with one face. Now I have a different face. And then it's talking face to face, because I think that's the best way to help people and support them.
Well, yeah, I agree. There's nothing better than a conversation, a supportive conversation. And it doesn't take much to support somebody that is going through something traumatic. Just as you said, when we were talking, just be kind. Just a smile, a kind word, good morning. I like your hair. I like, those types of things really mean so much, and it takes nothing.
Right. I found that kindness has been the biggest thing for me that helped me through. I mean, there were times when people did not look me in the eye because of my facial difference.
I was going to ask you, so I'm sure in the beginning you did, particularly people that knew you, because it had to be a shock to them. But when you started to go out into the community, and you, like I do, we do a lot of networking, and there's a lot of different functions. What was it like for you the first time you went out into like a public gathering or a public event?
I took a couple of things. One is my son wanted to swim, and so I was I was a lifeguard when I was younger, and I loved swimming. So it was a big thing for me. So now, mind you, I was physically different in the sense of not just, I lost like 80 pounds because
you hadn't been doing anything.
Correct.
And your body had to be, listen, there's nothing that's more devastating to the human body than radiation and chemo.
Right.
I mean, it's horrific.
And not being able to eat is a big thing. So I decided to go swimming with him, and then I thought, well, I'm going to go off the high dive. It was a huge mistake. The low dive. I'm not sorry, the low dive, not the high dive. And because he wanted to go off. So I'm like, okay, so I went off, and I was so weak, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even have enough strength to like kick myself back up to get back to the top, to get my breath. I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again.
Wow.
But those are the things I did, I stretched myself for him,
Sure.
So, but yeah. And then there was a little boy came up to me, just very bold, and I love kids, said, what happened to your face? And I'm just like, and for me, it was like, well, I had a condition that actually, that caused me to have a part of my face, removed. And he's like, okay. And then like off he went. So, but then we went, so I thought, okay, well, that wasn't too bad. So then we went, but people looked at me and they didn't really interact with me, I guess.
People will stare, you know,
yeah.
and it's not malicious in any way, but people see something different.
It's psychological. I mean, because you're looking at symmetry, because I did a lot of research on this, but you're looking at the symmetry when you're looking at somebody. So you automatically think, okay, their eyes should be even, their, mouth, know, so like all these different things, right? So when it's not, then they pause and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's different?
Trying to process it, yeah.
Right. So it's not really that they're staring, but that's how it feels when you're the individual,
Sure.
And so when you think about that. So like, I think that's a good thing for everyone to know is that, when you approach someone who looks different, it doesn't matter whether it's facial disfigurement or it doesn't matter if it's, artificial arm or artificial leg. It doesn't really matter why. If they look different or if they're different, color of their skin. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
They're not different on the inside. They're still a person on the inside.
Just like you, just like me, Nick, everybody. We're all the same.
Right. So if you look look deeper and see the person within and not just judge someone by the way their appearance.
And the thing of it is, and I was always raised this way, that, never judge a book by its cover type thing, right? Beauty has so little to do with what you look like.
Correct.
I mean, it really does, because I know a lot of beautiful people who are just ugly on the inside. So, I mean, it's a societal thing. It's what our society has told us, conditioned us to believe that is normal. What is normal, and and as soon as something just veers outside that just a little bit, outside of that norm, which really isn't really a thing.
I was going to say, there really is no normal. No. And I because I say that to all my patients.
None of us are normal.
Well, we're not normal. I'm like, no one's normal.
Nobody is.
Honestly, where does it say in the dictionary?
Who defined that?
Yeah.
Who made that call that this is normal? In none of us, even when you talk about symmetry, I did some research years ago. No human face is perfectly symmetrical. There's deviations. It might be slight, and I remember looking in the mirror and one of my ears is, you think, because I remember when I started to get facial hair and I would go to the barber and get sideburns and they wouldn't be even. And I'm like, because I would look at my ear on this side, and then on this side, he said, wait a minute, you didn't do that right. And he would laugh at me. He was an old school guy, right? And he would laugh at me. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? He said, your ears are messed up, man. They're not straight. And it was like, but that's a very true statement. And, I realize we could go down a rabbit hole of a whole different conversation on acceptance and things like that, because we should accept each other unconditionally as human beings. Humanity is one. It's one thing. We are all part of this larger body of life. And, even though we're all unique creatures within our own selves, we're all the same. We're all connected, and when I look at you, and this is the truth, and I'm not just saying this because you are sitting in that chair, you're a beautiful human being. I told you that the other day. I don't see, obviously I can see that you had a traumatic experience, right? Before I knew you, I knew, okay, you either were injured in some fashion or you had some sort of of an illness. But at the end of the day, the way you carry yourself and the way you present yourself and speak makes you more beautiful than, you're perfect.
And it took me a long time to get there, and like going back to me and my son went out to a restaurant and there was a little girl the whole time kept staring at me. She was turned around in the booth and standing up on the booth and like staring. And so I just take the opportunity when I can and just say, Seth, some people do not know or not taught correctly that you don't stare at people, and some people's parents, like I said it loud enough for them to hear, don't correct children when they're supposed to. So, right. But you need to ignore when someone is not, receptive or is not doing something correctly. So you can point, and I just took my finger and I just did like this for her to turn around, and she turned around really quickly. But I was just like, so it was very awkward for me, and I didn't want to put my son in a situation that made it awkward for him. So I just quit going out. I kind of hid for a while. And so the only time I would go anywhere was to pick him up from school. So that was like my whole treatment was all planned around me dropping my son off at school, then going to treatment, and then picking him up. So I had to make sure I was done by a certain time. And I have to find out what the why is for the individual, no matter what they're facing. You always have to know the why. And it could be they want to live long enough to see, their son or grandson get married. It could be someone is pregnant and they want to see the child. It doesn't really matter. If you know the why, you can build on that and help the individual to build them back up and get to the point. And I guess reason I am now so outspoken and so comfortable, I'm doing this for others because I want them to know they're okay, just how they are.
That is the best way to heal yourself, is by helping someone else. And people don't realize that you can't jump into somebody's story on chapter 10 and you got to go back to chapter 1. That's the only way you can understand who someone is, by having at least a little bit of an understanding of what the path those other 9 chapters.
Right.
You need to know that. So you've started Face2Face Healing. Talk to me a little bit tell me about the organization and your mission and what you guys are doing in the community now. And I know that our friend Linda Long is on your board now. So you have a board of directors. And let's get into a little bit more about the organization.
Yeah. So Face2Face Healing is building support through a community of individuals dealing with cancer or conditions of that cause an altered self-image. And we support them. We do that through, I have nurse navigation that I do. I'm trying to help them in that medical maze and guide them. Because, if you don't have the knowledge, which I was grateful that I had the knowledge to help myself and direct myself through everything. I even did my own discharge planning, by the way. But that's another story. Yeah, I mean, it's just helping them navigate through that. Because if they don't have someone to help them, and we collaborate with the healthcare professionals, which, I am now a partner with them because I'm a nurse. And so, yes, so they accept that, which is so you can advocate
for patients. And, that's something that, I mean, when you're in the moment, when you've had a diagnosis like that and you're in the moment, I know personally, I would most definitely need someone like that. I would not be able to focus to make those decisions in critical junctures along the way without having somebody to talk to about it, because I know who I am, and I just wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I'm going to go back to the reason we were created was because I noticed a gap in care where doctors and medicine do all they can to help the individual, and they're left emotionally and physically unable to adapt to their situation and be able to move forward. So being a previous case manager and also being a nurse, I was trained on looking at bottlenecks in the system. So I wanted to make a change. And that's why I wanted to be able to move forward with Face2Face Healing and doing what I'm doing is to help other people like me. Because I found the secret to my healing was actually helping others. And so that was what really, I've always helped others throughout my life, but now I'm able to help more people. And I'm just kind of like, my passion is helping everybody, but
you don't
it's really
go to nursing if that's not your passion.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's my belief. And my mom used to say that naming me Karen was the correct thing because I'm very caring. So I had to say that.
There you go.
But yes, we help individuals. And then I have Adriana who does the mental health counseling. She's a PhD clinical psychologist. And she is also a cancer survivor. So it makes it easier because we understand where they're coming from. She also does CISD, which is a critical incident stress debriefing. And so that could be for healthcare professionals, or it could be for anybody or a community that are dealing with, like, for example, during COVID, when all these people were passing away and they were by themselves, healthcare providers were having a very difficult time. So she would go in and speak to them. Yeah.
That was crazy.
We have a group now, UPNC UPNC Hellman. in Washington that reached out to us, and Adriana's going to do that next Friday because they've lost several patients. They've had to do cardiac arrest, and even being in that field, you're still human. So I think it's being able to help them through that process and giving them the tools to help them move forward. So we're looking forward to that. We also do financial support as long as we have funding, because cancer.
How do you get your funding? Do you do fundraisers throughout the year? Or?
So we do a couple of different things. Our main funding source right now is foundations.
Okay.
And so we get grants. We have a grant from Highmark Foundation. We've gotten also grants from the Pittsburgh Foundation.
Okay.
Snee Reinhardt Charitable Trust. I mean, there's different places that we get grants.
We talked about how amazing this community in Pittsburgh is. It's just it's broad, but it's close, tight knit at the same time. And
yes,
I get the impression from my experience that everybody supports everybody, and it's
And so being able to get donations, we have individual donations. We have corporations that like our charity partners, that type of thing.
Okay.
So one of the things that I want to try to build out is actually having people do monthly donations to help us really support our patients because we want to make sure we have constant income, and then the funders always want to know your sustainability plan. So if you have a sustainability plan, then they're more apt to fund you. So that's the other thing we're looking for. So we're looking at ways we can actually do that. I have an event. I'm part of the 50 or 50 actually tonight. And so that's another fundraiser we're doing. And we're going to be doing.
That was really cool, by the way. That's very, very cool. And, how did that photograph make you feel?
So, as I've told you before, or I've told you earlier, that me seeing a photograph of myself or seeing a video has always been a very difficult process because I see my face one way in a mirror and that it's lopsided or it's switched. So then when I see myself on camera or I see myself in a video and it's like, oh, but I've learned to like tune that out. And like just lean into the fact. I mean, I lean into my faith through this whole process, and it's allowed me the ability to look past that. If I want other people to look past that, I have to look past it myself.
To look past it first, right?
And so I don't look at myself as disfigured, but when I see a picture, I see a video, I'm like, oh yeah, you kind of are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of plays with my head a little bit, but I just try to like portray my best self everywhere I go. So, but yes. And then doing that event, but seeing that picture and the whole process with Tracy and taking the photograph and getting ready for it, it was very fun because she asked me, what do I want to portray? I said, I want to portray confidence. I want to portray resiliency. I want to portray beauty, like inner beauty along with outer beauty.
Those are all the things that you just, that's your vibe. That's you resonate that.
So one of the things you said to me when you looked at that portrait was that you could see my essence through my eyes.
I do, yes.
And so that was to me very impactful. And it's like, that's what I wanted.
She's very talented, number one, but it really pulled you out. You know what I mean? And that is so powerful. And one thing, we're going to start to wrap up here a little bit, but one thing we didn't touch on that I want to, before we do go, is your faith. We talked at length about that before we started to film. And I think it drives Nick crazy because we usually do a show before a show because I talk too much, right? But you really, as you said, leaned into your faith. And how big of a role did that play in your healing process?
Significant. I mean, if I there was a time when I was in severe pain and I was laying after my surgery and just praying like, God, just take me. Just take me. I just can't deal with this anymore. And he didn't. And I was like, okay, well then what's my purpose? Like, why am I still here? You know what I mean? I mean, other than my son, like, then I just kind of pull it together because I think we all have moments, but I pull it together and say, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, then I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to move forward and just be kind. And because during my whole process, I had angels. I had angels that were nurses. I had angels. Some were strangers. Some were people that worked in the hospital. It doesn't really matter, but like people touched my life. And I learned that like all the things I did before, I always had struggles. Like I were always roadblocks and I never understood why at that time. And then when I, for example, started Face2Face Healing, it was like all these roadblocks were open. Like that was what I was supposed to be doing. So it just made it so much easier, and helping people and collaborating and talking. Like no matter where I go now, I'm able to speak to somebody and help somebody. You know, I mean, even last night I went to an event and met somebody who actually had a friend that was struggling with cancer. So able to provide hope and inspiration. And she called me her angel. But I'm not looking for recognition. I am a vessel that God has given me the opportunity to provide light and hope and inspiration throughout.
Do you realize what you just said? Your mission is almost a ministry of sorts, because your message of hope and healing and all those things, everybody needs that. Everybody, because one thing that we miss in our day-to-day are those broken people that you can't see, that you can't physically see the trauma, right? And there's a lot. I'm one of them. There's a lot out there. So I'm glad you touched on that, and because I talked about your ring. That is also so perfect. And you want to talk about symmetry. That's perfectly symmetrical. And it brings your journey, puts it right in alignment, right?
Are you talking about the ring I have? It says I'm enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it took me a while to get to that, but yeah, I found this ring, and I am enough. I mean, we all are enough.
Right.
So you don't need anyone else to complete you. Right. If anything, it should be pulling you and collaborating with you and being a team and moving forward. It should never be someone needing somebody to complete you.
Absolutely.
That's definitely important for me.
It's a great reminder. I mean, it really is. So our mission, Nick and I, and on the podcast and the blog and everything that we do, is to really, we have these 5 pillars that we build on: live, love, learn, pray, inspire. Those are, my dad always told me those 5 things. He would say, if you do those 5 things every day, you're going to have a pretty good day.
Yep.
Right.
I believe that.
So of those 5 things, live, love, learn, pray, and inspire, what one of those kind of resonates with you, and why?
Oh my gosh, they all do. They all because I live every day to the fullest. I love with all my heart every day. I try to inspire at least someone every day, and I think I do that.
Absolutely.
Learn. Did you say learn? I feel that learning is something you always continually need to be doing. Yes. The world is constant changing, so you need to always be adapting. So learning is a portion of that.
Live, love, learn, pray, inspire. And we just talked about faith.
And I pray daily.
We just talked about faith.
Yes. And so that's very important to me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, what do you got?
I just want to say, so to learn more about Face2Face Healing, which I think he'll provide a link to that, right?
Yes, we will. And you can go ahead and say it.
And it's face2facehealing.org. And
that's a number 2, right?
Yes, the number 2. So FACE, the number 2, FACE, healing.org. And I think, and we have coming up is Giving Tuesday. And we're going to be doing for patient holiday gifts for kids, cancer patients, for their kids. So that's one thing to help get clothes for the older kids. And then we also have patient care package that we do for our patients.
And this information is on the website.
Correct.
Okay.
So excellent. If you have any questions or anything, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way. And thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you, Jim, for allowing me to come on here and share.
It's been an honor for us to have you here. And I hope that we'll be able to keep in touch and keep moving and doing things together. And we will definitely promote the your organization and the events, and especially coming up and coming into the holidays when it's really so much more impactful, coming into that time of year. When you're having an issue, especially a health issue that's serious. So thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
All right.